SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome students to the online NPTEL course Contemporary Architecture and Design. In today's class we will discuss about another postmodern architectural movement which is deconstructivism. This deconstructive architecture is one of the latest architectural movement in postmodernism. In postmodernism also we have seen that historicism was in the beginning, then new modern and other high-tech and other movement started, and also we have seen critical regionalism we have discussed. Now today we will discuss this deconstructive architectural style. So if you look at the timeline, it's this postmodern modern was a pure more these movements were more based on the timeline, but most of the postmodern art and design form was evolved mostly in the parallel time frame because it's just 1980s onwards, so it's hardly 3 decades. And deconstructivism or the deconstructive architectural style was one of the newest form of postmodern architectural style. But when we connote the term deconstructive architectural style, this has a precursor which comes from one of the modernist movement, which was not a movement which flourished and got constructed, but this was only very conceptual and small happened in a very small phase of time, which was constructivism. So first we will discuss what is constructivism, but now have a look at the deconstructive style of building which is added in this timeline of the photograph. So we have discussed historicism, and most of the architectural style of postmodernism has something some reaction against the modernism in their design principles. So historicism opposed the modernist concept of leaving all history from this architectural visual vocabulary. So they went back to the history and they have taken many inspiration from the history, and then this high-tech architecture style have taken farther from this modernist movement, late modernist movement of the third phase of this metabolism, and then from outside they have shown the services as the facade or the high-tech technology as a facade in Lloyd building and other buildings like Pompidou Center. So all this technology and also the construction can also be the facade like Norman Foster's design, and glass and all this new technology. And then neo modern changed the modernity, and we have seen how the duality of this modernism was there. Then critical regionalism also opposed a totally on the opposite side of the internationalist movement of the placelessness, and this was highly contextual, and contextual elements were taken. We have also discussed one of the design movement, which is Memphis Milano. We will also discuss another few art and design movement which was close to the Memphis Milano, like pop and other movement, and also we will discuss the what happened in the graphic design and typography. Today we will discuss about the deconstructivism. The deconstructivism's idea was it was against the minimalist form of late of the high modern, which is second phase internationalist movement. So it's not less is more, and it has a lot of complex form and complex design elements were there. And another is like it does not show the construction process. Like many of the deconstructive style building, when we discuss, you might have a visual relationship with the movements which was there in the tensile and shale. So there were also shale structures in the tensile and shale, which was in the modernism, like Hiro Saarinen's airports, which we have seen, and Kenzo Tange's tensile structures. But in that case, the construction technique was the aesthetic. So we have seen in the Hiro Saarinen's airport, the way construction or the structure load was flowing, that was the structure of the airport. And even the construction shales of this airport of New York was shown how this structure loads are flowing from this shale structure. But here in this deconstructive style, you will see that the structure loads, how it is flowing, will not be explained through the facade, and the facade from outside will look something else, which actually is happening in the construction and the design process. So the deconstructivism architectural features are opposed to the ordered rationality of modernism. Modernism was very organized and ordered, and everything was in a particular visual sequence, and one particular visual style was there. It was not mixed and very minimal. The lines will be has less inertia. So if you discuss the visual principle from the visual aesthetic from the principle of design, so if the lines are horizontal or vertical, it has less inertia. If the lines are angular and tilted, then it has more inertia. So deconstructive lines has more inertia, and this all most of the lines, if they are rectilinear lines, will be more angular, and they will mostly avoid 90 degree. So it will be acute or obtuse angles will be more visible in the deconstructive line, and this is modern or internationalist modern movement, where there everything will be in the 90 degree grid. And we have also seen the similar grid which is visible from outside. We have seen it in François House and other buildings of internationalist movement. So in deconstructive style, it will be opposite to the modern internationalist movement's visual style. Now complexity and contradiction argues against the purity, clarity and simplicity of modern age of internationalist movement, especially. So there will be complexity and contradiction. So this is the contradiction which I was talking about in the previous slide, where there is a contradiction. So we will discuss this building. So there will be a contradiction of what is happening inside the building and how the structure flows inside the building. But here in this style of Hiro Saarinen's design, or Kenzo Tange's tensile structure, or Hiro Saarinen's shell structure, there is no contradiction of what is happening in the structure. So the way structure is working, that will be visible from outside, but here it won't be. The ornamentation, the complexity of geometry and structural imbalance is the ornamentation. So more you create the acute angle, and if the lines are not in proper order and each and every line is flowing in a different direction, then there is no there is a structural or the visual imbalance which will be created, and that is the beauty, that is the aesthetic principle of deconstructive style, that imbalance and more inertia. So it will have a more dynamic form in the if you think from the visual perspective. And so this ornamentation is a postmodern ornamentation. So postmodern historicism is different. So illusion of historic richness, that was the style of ornamentation in the postmodern historicism. So each and every postmodern style, it's mostly it's ornamental. So historicism took the ornamentation from historic buildings, which is pre-industrial revolution buildings. All we are clubbing it in one history. So what you read in the history of architecture till industrial revolution. So everything they can all these movements from classical architecture to Gothic and even Baroque, Rococo, everything we are putting it as a history. So that from there they will borrow the ornamentation. High tech will borrow the ornamentation as a new technology, so that will be the ornamentation. And then in critical regionalism, the ornamentation will come from the particular regionalistic style. And then in neo-modern, also ornamental, because it will take from modernist style, but then it will mix it with the impurity and duality. So it will again be ornamental, like Wall House of John Hedgeduck and Richard Mayer's work. And then here in the deconstructive style, the ornamentation is the complexity of geometry. So many things will be added, many different kind of lines and angularity. That is the ornamentation of deconstructive architecture style. So postmodern cubism in architecture. So cubism is an art of modernist movement that is also a indicator of deconstructive architecture style, as well as the constructivism. So from these two modern movements, which did not flourish in mostly in art, and from that the deconstructive style came in the architecture. So these are some examples of constructivism in conceptual in concept of architecture. So all these works were mostly conceptual, so it was not made in the real scale. And a few of the paintings are there, and then from there deconstructive architecture style is connected. So this is the constructivism and Russian futurism, which we will discuss. So this happened in the modern time, which you can see in 1990. So it's modern first phase, but all these are in concept. So when these Art Deco and other movements were happening, that time there was another another movement in architecture and art, which is called constructivism. So they started to show the power of new technology, because if you remember, so in 1920s what was happening, just before that there was a machine aesthetics and another was against the machine movement. So for the machine movement they are making this Eiffel Tower, and then there are also this Art Nouveau and art and craft movement. Art and craft movement was going on, which is on the opposite side. So this constructivism has taken one step further from this machine aesthetics or the for the machine movement, which was like Eiffel Towers and other things were going on. But Eiffel Towers was very structurally stable and bilateral symmetrical, so symmetry was there and the structural load was flowing in a proper way, and there is arch on the bottom, so it was stable. So they made it. Now in modern 1920s, when the modernism, actual modernism started, so they started experimenting with the structure, and then they made some structure which is tilted and which has more inertia, and so these kind of structure they have made, but it was not possible with the structural knowledge at that time to make this kind of construction which is tilted and distorted. But so that was only conceptual in 1990s and 1920s onwards. So there were a few designs by Vladimir Tatlin and other architects from mostly from Russia. That was the center, but it was only a conceptual level, because that was that time it did not flourish, and because of the technique of construction it was so difficult, and that time it was the era of the parallel situation was World War and other thing was going on. So they focused on form follows function, so all this Bauhaus and other movement came out, and so this got faded away. So other conceptual this painting or the conceptual architecture you can see. So this was like a huge cantilever on some structural members, and these a kind of conceptual architecture was there, which is a tower is tilted and which is getting supported by this, but this did not none of these got constructed. All these were in conceptual level. So this was the constructivism. That time they named it as a constructivism, which later in the modern, even after not in 1980s, quite after that, followed taken by this deconstructive architects, and then they made it. And many of the deconstructive architecture, like Bilbao, it was when Bilbao Guggenheim Museum was designed by Gehry. That time also it was quite difficult to design a Bilbao Guggenheim Museum. We will discuss today. So this kind of elements were there in the Bilbao Guggenheim Museum, which is very very fluid, and a lot of different lines were growing. So even many of the structural engineers came together and then they solved the structural structure for the Bilbao design. And so you can imagine in 1990s it was absolutely impossible to design this kind of futuristic concepts. And then there was Cubism and Russian futurism in the painting, where the concept of deconstructive architecture also is got influenced by Cubism and Russian futurism. So one of the famous painting by Pablo Picasso is Guernica, and then Braque's painting and Natalie Goncharova's painting in the Russian futurism. It talks about a painting which is 2D, and it can depict a 3D form, but here it is depicting 4 dimensions in together. So it's like a time dimension is also there. So all these things are broken into pure cubes, and an experience of all these surfaces were there. So there is this violin and candlestand. There was also paintings of tables, and everything will be all these surfaces will be shown. So if you look at Picasso's painting of human faces, the side face, front face, and every faces will be there. So it's like depicting, capturing a time dimension into the painting. So here also, if you look at the cyclist, so it shows the movement. So it's not one cycle. So first the cycle was here, and then it is going in different lines. So there are many legs you will see and hands. So it depicts the movement which is in the in a time frame. So in that way, so everything is getting distorted, and the cube and all the shapes will be broken into different multiple shapes, and mostly rectilinear lines, or the cubes will be the unit of this shape. So that's why this Cubism and Russian futurism was there, which talks about time and then breaking into linear and rectilinear forms. So that was a style which has many of the deconstructive architects have taken. So it's the first example is Wexner Center of Art, which is designed in 1989 Ohio by Peter Eisenman. So this design, if you look at, so this design talks about the sense of incompleteness, and this incompleteness is there in the structure and visual. So aesthetics is has its priority over functionality and structure. So if you look at this a corner which has a bastion of a fort, and bastion of a fort is a structure, is a strong member, but if you cut it from this middle, so it loses its structural strength. So that was shown in this design. So the bastion, which is a very strong heavy element, is splitted from the middle. So that is the duality of the design, and that is the like this is questioning the structure of and strength of a particular element which already we have in the mental model. So when we think about a bastion of a fort, so it should look robust and it should look complete, but that's questioning our mental model and then creating a bastion which is not complete. And now when you start entering this Wexner Center, there's a series of column which looks like a space frame or scaffolding like like incomplete structure and like a puzzle, and but it gives you a linear direction to the entry, which is also making a place and directing you to the entrance, and that's that's aesthetic and as well as the functional is leading you to the it's also a wayfinding element. But if you look at the structure, it looks incomplete and looks like a scaffolding and a series of lines which is going on, and which is definitely not minimalist because of this series of lines, and this is added for the aesthetic and as well as the wayfinding purpose. Now if you look at the inside of this building, so this is this looks like a column. So in our mental model or the mental image of the past experience, the column should transfer the load to the ground, but this column is hanging, so it's definitely not transferring the load to the ground, and this is adding the load to the ceiling. So that is also questioning the structure, and this is a pseudo column which is not exactly what it should be, what we imagine in our mental model. So again there is a visual cue of another connection which goes in these two directions, but this is getting stopped. So this is also a incompleteness in the structure, and this structural grid and this grid of this staircase is not following. This structure is coming on in front of the staircase, so this is intentionally designed. This is not a mistake of the design. So this also creates the aesthetics, and that is how it's not following the structural grid, and that is what deconstructive architecture style is. So it won't follow the structural grid, and it will create some line which is not following each other, and that's why this is angular and other lines. There won't be any relation to the with the other lines, or in this case there is no relation with the structural grid and this functional or level changing devices. Now another design by which is Arnoff Center of Design and Art in Cincinnati by Peter Eisenman. So this from outside, if you look at the building, this building looks like the floor plates of the buildings are tilted, and you can from outside it will look like the building is totally tilted. So it's taking it's giving a visual cue of that the building is not structurally stable. So it's deconstructive, and the construction is it's not following the lines. So that was there in the Russian constructivism when the Tatlin's towers, tilted towers, and they were designing some floors which was totally tilted. So if you look at the floors will be tilted in this building, right, and then it's coming from one side, and juxtaposition of different cubes which comes which has a similarity with the cubism. So this was again revived in the deconstructive style. So from outside it looks like all the floor plates are tilted, but if you look carefully, so this is the floor plate which is parallel. Otherwise in the tilted floor plate nobody can walk. So it's from inside also there are a lot of elements which is going from, and this has a cubist way of breaking the facade in small rectangles, and then which is not following each other. So there's like overlaps of series of rectangles and cubes on top of each other. So you can see these inside, and even the in the ceiling and from outside as well. So this is actually the fenestration, and then this part is added just to give a visual cue of this fenestration is leaning, but it is not. So this is actually the floor plate is ending over here. So as in these cases. So from outside, so what it's portraying is not actually which is showing. So that was not there in the in the shell structure and tensile structure. It was showing how the structure and construction has been done, but here it is the opposite. Now another example is Parc de la Villette by Bernard Schumi. So he have designed many structures in the park, and he's also many examples in architecture as well. So this is also has a similarity. So you can have a you can connect this with the visual with the style of constructivism in the Russian constructivism sketches and others. So they started designing and getting inspiration from the constructivism style. And here also there's a kind of incompleteness in the structure. So there's one grid, and this line visually connects this, but it's not structurally connected. So you can imagine a void of a which gives a void of a cube, and but still it's not complete. Then it's a little tilt from here, and a visual cue of a circle, and one truss which is hanging. So all these hanging elements, and which is going from which is has different inertia or different inclination, is creating this composition which is very ornate and very complex in nature, and which is opposite to the internationalist style. So we'll also continue with many other examples of deconstructive style of buildings and other things in the in design in next classes. The next class we'll talk about the building, and then the other classes we will discuss all these postmodern designs in postmodern styles which we are discussing in architecture, and how they have impacted in interior design and furniture design.